Good morning. My name is Dr. P. Mary Anupama. I am working as a faculty from the Department of Biochemistry, St. Joseph's College for Women. So today we will be dealing with the topic antigens. So antigens are the foreign substances which we all know, and the contents that will be dealt in this presentation are definition, attributes, clonal selection theory, basic classification of antigens, biological classification of antigens, major classes of antigens, dosage and routes of administration, adjuvants, and factors that affect induction of immune response. So coming to the definition, antigens, these may be defined as substances which, when introduced into any tissue of the animal, they stimulate the production of antibodies, which again are specific, and they also result in the production of sensitized cells of the immune system. So here sensitization of specific lymphocytes is taking place, and this leads to what is known as cell mediated immunity. Antigen, when introduced into the body, either it reacts directly with the B cells or with the T cells, that is the immunocytes, which carry specific markers against that particular antigen. Now coming to the attributes of antigenicity by the antigen. Here the attributes are two. One is immunogenicity, the other one is immunological reactivity. Immunogenicity means induction of immune response, while immunological reactivity means specific reaction with the antibodies that are produced, or specifically reacting with the sensitized cells that are produced out of the first step, that is immunogenicity. And the most remarkable feature of the immune system is that it has the ability to specifically respond to millions of different foreign antigens. That is the beauty of our immune system. Next, one more important thing is clonal selection theory. So here, when an antigen is introduced into the body, or it enters into the body, we have several clones of lymphocytes which are existing in the body, but it selectively leads to proliferation of one particular clone of a B cell or a T cell. So here is an example where, say for example, you have stem cells. These stem cells, they divide, they differentiate, and result in the formation of many clones of B cells in the T cells. And say for example, an antigen has entered which has specificity to this particular antibody present on the surface of a B cell. So this antigen, it specifically stimulates this particular clone because of that affinity for that, and this particular clone now gets sensitized. Out of this sensitization, these clones, they divide, they differentiate, resulting in the formation of memory cells and plasma cells. And these plasma cells produce antibodies which again specifically bind with this antigen. So this is what is clonal selection theory. Out of all the clones, the antigen selects one particular clone which divides, differentiates, and result in specific antibodies. And here B cells, they directly bind like this, while T cells, they cannot take up the antigen. They require MHC molecules. Antigen presenting cells which have MHC molecules take up the antigen, process it, and present via MHC class II molecules to the T cells. Now, classification of antigens. Broadly, antigens, they can be classified as complete antigens and incomplete antigens. Complete antigens means they have the two major attributes, that is, they induce the immune response, that is, they can result in the production of antibodies, and they even have the capacity of immunological reactivity, that is, they can combine with the antibodies that they produce. Now we have incomplete antigens also, like this hapten, which is a very small molecule. As such, hapten cannot induce immune response by itself. Even if you administer it, no antibodies are produced. But when hapten is combined with a larger molecule like a carrier molecule, its size is increased. This will induce the immune response. Once immune response is produced, antibodies are produced, and these antibodies, they can bind with the hapten. And here haptens as such, they do not have any immunological reactivity. The best example for a hapten is DNP, that is dinitrophenyl group. This as such cannot induce immune response, But when it is coupled with some carrier, a larger molecule, this will induce production of anti-DNP antibodies, and these are of polyclonal origin. Previously we have seen that only one clone will get stimulated, that is what is clonal selection theory. But when DNP with carrier is induced, many clones will get stimulated, that is what is polyclonal in origin. This means several clones of B cells they get stimulated and different types of antibodies will be produced which have their own characteristic affinity for that particular antigen. Now we have one more term called as epitope. What is epitope? It is also called as antigenic determinant. An antigen is a very large molecule. In this molecule you have what are known as specific sites to which the antigen binding site of antibody binds. This you call it as the epitope. Generally epitope it comprises of 4 to 5 amino acids or monosaccharide residues, and they possess a specific chemical structure, they have some electric charge, and they have some spatial configuration which allows its specific binding to the paratope of the antibody. Now we have again different types of epitopes: linear epitopes, which are also called as sequential epitopes, and conformational epitopes. Linear epitopes means they are a result of epitopes which are present very much next to each other. The residues of the amino acids, they are present very next to each other as a linear chain. So this you call it as the linear epitopes. While conformational epitopes, these are formed during the three-dimensional folding of the protein. So here different amino acids of the protein chain they come together to form a conformational epitope, and this is the paratope or the antigen binding site of the antibody. Now coming to one more term, valency of antigen, that is number of epitopes the antigen has, that is what is valency. So here this is the antigen, it has 4 epitopes. BSA, which is a very large molecule of around 70,000 Daltons, it has 6 functional epitopes as such. But when it is denatured, the hidden epitopes which are present inside the bovine serum albumin, they will be also revealed. So it has around 18 epitopes then. Denaturation will reveal the hidden epitopes. So as such, it has 6 epitopes, but it has 12 hidden epitopes. So presence of different types of epitopes, it induces the formation of different antibodies which can specifically bind to them. So epitope 1 will result in that particular clone stimulation which leads to the formation of that particular type of antibodies. Epitope 2 will lead to another type of clonal stimulation resulting in the formation of that particular type of antibodies. Epitope 3 will stimulate another clone resulting in that type of antibodies. Epitope 4 will stimulate another clone which will result in that particular type of antibodies, but these have specificity against that particular epitope. So factors that affect the induction of immune response. There are several factors which determine the intensity of immune response. Say for example size. Smaller immune molecules like we have seen aptins, they are not at all immunogenic, while the molecule, if its size is larger, then it is highly immunogenic. Say for example here you see hemocyanin of the molecular weight of 6.75 into 10 to the power 6 Daltons. It is highly immunogenic as compared to insulin, which is just 5000 Daltons. Okay, it is less antigenic. Now coming to the chemical nature, yes, proteins are highly antigenic, while polysaccharides which have same structural units, monosaccharides, they are not at all antigenic. So chemical nature determines it. More complex it is, more immunogenic it is. Next, susceptibility to tissue enzymes. The antigens at times they have to be fragmented. So here when an antigen is consumed by the phagocytic cells, it is fragmented by the intracellular enzymes. Then only that immunogenic fragment which is there, it is brought out, and that induces immune response. So it is to be susceptible to tissue antigens, tissue enzymes. Next, foreignness. So here antigens, they must be very much foreign. Self antigens, they are not at all immunogenic. The more the far, that is, the more allogenic they are, or they are from some other bacteria or viruses which are not at all, those should not be there in us. So such proteins we call them as foreign. So if it is foreign, then only it will induce immune response. Then antigenic specificity. The basis of this antigenic specificity is again spatial arrangement of the molecules. So the stereochemistry part comes here. So here we have what is known as this antigenic specificity. It's first demonstrated by Obermeyer and Pick, who have confirmed that, which is again confirmed by Landsteiner, and they have confirmed that yes, they react very specifically. And here, even at times we see that cross reactivity is exhibited. Say for example, there is bovine serum albumin, and again you have some other cow serum albumin. Both the albumins may be sharing some epitopes. So antibodies produced against the BSA can also react with the other one, that is the cow serum albumin, or it can react with hen serum albumin, and so on and so forth. This is because of sharing of antigenic determinants or epitopes. So this is called as cross reactivity. Next, biological classes of antigens. Depending on their ability to form antibodies, again these antigens are classified into two types, that is whether they can induce the T cells or not. Based on that, they are classified into T dependent antigens and T independent antigens. So directly T independent antigens means they don't require any involvement of T cells. They directly stimulate the B cells and result in antibody production. While T dependent antigens means they require stimulation of T cells. And if T cells have to take it, initially it has to be taken up by an antigen presenting cell. The antigen presenting cell processes the antigen and presents the epitope to the T cells. Then the T cells get stimulated, and these T cells release interleukins, which in turn stimulate B cells, which in turn produce antibodies. These we call them as T dependent antigens. So here T independent antigens, generally these are structurally very simple. They have few repeating epitopes, like you have this pneumococcal polysaccharide, capsular polysaccharides, bacterial lipopolysaccharides, flagellar proteins, etc. These induce mainly IgM and IgG3 antibody production, but immunological memory formation will not be there, and they do not require any preliminary processing. Directly the B cells, they interact with it. While when it comes to T dependent antigens, these are structurally complex, hence involvement of these macrophages comes into role. Examples include erythrocytes, some serum proteins, hapten with carrier proteins, etc. They induce the formation of all sorts of antibodies, all the gamete type. They require preliminary processing, and then the T cells, they recognize that antigen which is presented by the macrophages, and these in turn induce the B cells, which in turn mature. They divide and differentiate to form memory cells and plasma cells, and plasma cells produce antibodies. So parallelly you can see that immunological memory is generated. So here, based upon the chemical nature, if we have to classify antigens, we can classify them as carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids and proteins. Carbohydrates, yes, most of the polysaccharides, they are not immunogenic. Very few of them are immunogenic. Like if they exist in the form of glycoproteins, then they may be immunogenic. Like some are seen on the bacteria, some on the viruses, and mainly are blood group antigens which are present on the surface of the RBC. These induce antibody formation. And then lipids, again lipids as such, they are not immunogenic, barely they are immunogenic, but in combination with again proteins or some larger polysaccharides in the form of glycoproteins or sphingolipids, they exhibit little bit of immunogenicity. Then nucleic acids like DNA and RNA, they are not at all immunogenic, but in the case of an autoimmune disease which is called as systemic lupus erythematosus, antibodies are produced against single-stranded and double-stranded DNA molecules. This is an autoimmune disease. Other than that, DNA is never immunogenic. Then coming to proteins, yes, proteins are highly complex. We have 20 different types of amino acids, which make up these proteins, and every protein has more than 50 amino acids, which are of varying complexity in their structure, in their arrangement and all. So these are highly immunogenic. And in general, proteins are multi-determinant, that is, they have many types of epitopes. And based upon the molecular weights also, their immunogenicity varies. So here you can see we have bovine gamma globulin, which is 1,50,000 Daltons. BSA is the next potent immunogenic, 69,000 Daltons. Then you have this keyhole limpet hemocyanin, which is 20 lakh Daltons. It is the highly immunogenic protein. Now coming to the immunogen dosage, how much dose of antigen you have to give to get that immune response. So here, if you give very small quantity, it may not be sufficient to induce the immune system. So insufficient quantity administration will not induce the formation of any antibodies. You need to give some dosage. Okay, if that dosage is given, this you call it as the first dose. If it is given, antibody production will be taking place. It will go to a peak, and then again antibody concentration will come down. Okay, even if you give more dose of antigen also, it will fail. It will fail to induce the immune response. So ideal quantity has to be given. Excess antibody will also, excess antigen will be of no use. Okay, it leads to immune tolerance or unresponsiveness in the host. So if an ideal dose, say for example, in mice, they have given around 0.5 mg of an antigen which has failed to induce immune response. Then they have slightly decreased it to 5 into 10 to the power of minus 4 mg. That has induced immune response. So if a single dose is given, initially the antibody production will be seen, and then again it will decrease with time as antibodies are metabolized. Then you give the second dose, which you call it as booster dose. This will boost up the response. You see that immunological memory which is created here will lead to the formation of several stimulated clones of B cells and T cells, which in turn induce antibody production. Thereby the concentration of antibody will be increasing. Next, routes of administration. So there are several routes of administration, but when an antigen is being tested, the major routes that are used are IV route, intravenous route, wherein the antigen is administered into veins; intradermal route, wherein the antigen is administered into the skin; intramuscular route, where the antigen is introduced into the muscle; intraperitoneal route, the antigen is introduced into peritoneal cavity. Next, coming to adjuvants, one more important topic. Here in Latin, adjuvare means to help. So here what is adjuvant doing is, it is boosting up the immune response. These are substances which enhance the immunogenicity of an antigen when mixed with it. What is the reason behind this? These exert some effects during the immune response, which include antigen persistence is prolonged. That means the antigen, the duration with which it stays in the body, it is prolonged. The longer the duration it stays, the more will be the immune response, the more will be the antibody production and immunological memory. Next, co-stimulatory signals are enhanced. That is, other than the specific T cell response, the other response will also be induced, leading to increased immunological responses. Then local inflammation is increased. Inflammation will attract more of macrophages and all. So obviously this will enhance the immune response and antibody production, and it will also lead to non-specific proliferation of lymphocytes. Then again, adjuvants, you have two important adjuvants: Fluence incomplete adjuvant and Fluence complete adjuvant. In Fluence incomplete adjuvant, it consists of antigen. It is initially suspended in some aqueous solution, that is solubilized. Then you add a little bit of mineral oil to it. Then you add the emulsifying agent, mannite monooleate, and then you try to disperse it. So this will lead to the formation of small droplets. So the antigen will be present in the water. This in turn is surrounded by the lipid. So that is what is small droplets formation. When such suspension is administered into the body, it will lead to slow release of antigen. So thereby its persistence is increased. So the longer the duration it stays, the more the antibody production you will see. Next is Fluence complete adjuvant. So here in this Fluent's complete adjuvant, which is formulated by Fluent, it contains one added component which is called as heat killed mycobacteria. So this heat killed mycobacterial component, it has this ingredient called as muramyl peptide, which is a component of the bacterial cell wall. This attacks macrophages. So as macrophages come, they take up the antigen, they process it, and it leads to high levels of MHC class 2 molecules formation on the macrophages. So more T cells will come, thereby more activation of T helper cells will be taking place. This in turn will lead to lots of B cell formation and antibody production. At times this Fluent's adjuvant, as it is leading to increased macrophage attraction to that particular site, it can lead to what is known as granuloma formation. Macrophages, they come together as dense mass called as granuloma. This also enhances T helper cell formation. Thank you.